Okay guys, so welcome back. This is module 10. This should be video 2. This is Rogers chapter 8. We're going to talk about diffusion networks and those things that make up the diffusion of an innovation. So we're going to start with opinion leadership, the degree to which an individual is able informally to influence other individuals' attitudes or overt behavior in a desired way with relative frequency. This means this opinion leader is capable of changing our minds, and it's a predictable thing. They do it over and over again. We can count on it. Opinion leader adoption starts the upward slope of the S-shaped curve. So it is the beginning of the critical mass. So when you get that opinion leader, they've got their whole network of followers. They are respected, and they are capable of moving an innovation through a diffusion process. Some characteristics of opinion leaders are highly conforming to the norms of their system. So they are very comfortable in their social environment. They are homophilous to it. People are very comfortable with them. They're approachable. They're more connected to mass media than their followers. They're more connected to basically any media and different avenues for communication than their followers are. They've got extensive interpersonal networks, greater social participation, more cosmopolite, so they are very comfortable outside of their own social system, but they fit in to the social system when they're there. Higher socioeconomic status. We talked about this in the other chapter, that they might have more disposable income, so they can be more innovative. They are not the innovators, but they are more innovative than the other adopters in the system. So they may have, more money. They've got more capacity to try things out. Sought out by change agents for their influence. More innovative than followers, but generally not innovators. So it depends on the social system norms. Rogers is very clear. If the social system is more innovative, then they're going to have a higher level of innovativeness. If it's not, they're going to display a lower level of innovativeness. And they have a delicate relationship with their followers. They're not too innovative, lest one become a nut. So Rogers makes it pretty clear in this reading that innovators really are not thought of positively. They are, I think at one point he says they're way too elitist. This might be in the further slide, but way too elitist and very much too oriented toward change. So people think they're crazy. So the opinion leaders are far, far away from that status. They're not thought of that way at all. They're thought of in a respectful way that says they know things and I should listen to them and do what they say. So this is an important thing to understand, because not just because they're different words and they're hard to pronounce. Homophily and heterophily. Homophily, the degree to which a pair of individuals who communicate are similar, and heterophilous is interacting individuals are different in certain attributes. So some are the same, some are different. So from a homophilous perspective, you've got common beliefs, mutual understanding, common meanings. Communication is easy. People feel safe when they're talking to someone who's like them, and the communication is effective, but they get very few new ideas. So he goes through this in the reading that basically what your buddies know, and nobody's kind of reaching out to anyone else. So you're not going to learn anything new in this kind of tight, similar group. Heterophilous, on the other hand, they require more effort to communicate effectively. They may be uncomfortable because beliefs may be different. It might be a frustrating conversation, different social statuses, different levels of technical competence, but you get new ideas. So you think about it when you sort of introduce yourself to a new group, right? You're not part of this group. You're sort of entering in. Everything is different. So you feel very uncomfortable. You may not know what people like to talk about or the words that they use. You might think you have maybe a different dialect, or maybe your Southern and talking to a Midwesterner, or a Midwesterner talking to a New Yorker, or something like that, where you just have different ways of using words, and it's a more strained communication. But you're going to find new things that are outside of your social system. So heterophilous links are those connections between different homophilous groups. So those are the individuals that are potentially the opinion leaders, where I've got my homophilous group, they're all just like me, and then I've got this other group, and I connect to them through maybe my friend, who might be, you know, a little bit more like me, and then that person connects with this other group. And we share different ideas between the two of us that bring new ideas to each homophilous group. So those links are those really critical pieces where we are reaching out to learn new things from new groups. And, you know, they mentioned that innovators do not talk to laggards, just like they kind of liken it to people in different social statuses, where higher social economic status don't talk to lower economic status. And not in a bad way, but just they're just in different areas, and so therefore they just may not come into contact with one another. And innovators and laggards the same way. They speak a very different language, and they really don't understand the way that the one conducts themselves. So it's very difficult for them to communicate. And it just kind of shows you the way that we are comfortable with our communication group, our social group, and it's difficult for us to bring new ideas into that group. So there's a way, so we talked about the importance of opinion leadership and finding opinion leaders in order to diffuse our innovations. There were a number of ways to do this. Sociometric methods, where we kind of maybe send out a survey, talk to people, ask them who they use when they need an advice or an opinion. Informants rating. So subjectively selected informants in a system, so you're getting a smaller group of people and asking them, you know, who are the leaders in this group? Who do people go to for information? Self-designating methods, where I say I am the opinion leader here, or someone else, you know, volunteers themselves. And then observation, where you know, an ethnographer of some sort will come in and take a look at how an organization works. You know, does this person have a bunch of people waiting in their by their cube or in their office to talk to them about something? Does this happen all the time? Observation obviously is the type, the method that takes the longest, because you've got to be around there for a long time to kind of recognize these things. So it's important. So Rogers puts this in here because it's important to find the opinion leader. So, and this is going to be important for, projects as you're working on diffusion of innovation projects. You need to know, with regard to your project or your specific desired innovation, who is respected for this type of information. Is it technical? Is it specific to your department? Is it specific to, a division or something like that, where everybody needs this person's approval in order to move forward with a diffusion? So from there, we go to diffusion networks. So there's a lot of different case studies in this chapter that talk about how different innovations diffused. They talked about more innovative states leading the nation in adopting social programs. So, and we are among them. And I wouldn't be surprised if it had something to do with the extension program that Rogers talks about, very much in the book. That it was one of the first ones in the nation, and therefore, gave us a reputation for innovation. The 5 states take things on first, and then neighboring states adopted, and then on and on. So again, it is the heterophilous nature of these states that makes them more open to innovation. But then within those states, there is a homophilous relationship between the neighboring states, and it is that homophily that diffuses the innovation. So again, this is the way that the states came together as instruments of change, and then they're able to communicate with those states that have the same language, the same values. So, and you can kind of see, although there isn't really anything for the South, but you've got that Midwestern, you've got that Western side, you've got the East Coast, and they're able to communicate with others in their network that are similar to them. The medical doctors in tetracycline was another good case study where they talked about 15% adoption in 2 months from the release of tetracycline, 50% in 4 months, and almost complete adoption in a little more than a year. So this is pretty remarkable. And what they looked at is the interconnectedness of these doctors. So how were they interconnected? So they found that they were connected through hospital affiliation, through the attendance of hospital staff meetings, sharing an office, or they were a resource or a best friend to another doctor. And it was that relationship, those opportunities for interaction that diffused the tetracycline innovation. And you kind of think about, when you choose like a doctor or something, after reading this case study, I thought, gosh, it's kind of important that a doctor be part of like a larger practice maybe, because otherwise, how do they get new ideas into their office that you can take advantage of? So it was interesting to me how much they influence each other and how important it is that they have an opportunity to come together. The case study about the birth of the internet from ARPANET, which was the government internet, and then BitNet, which is because it's time network, and how those networks kind of grew organically through just a need to communicate and hearing about it from an associate. They were educational, academic networks where the different colleges came together and decided, hey, I'd like to connect to that as well. And the internet was born through the birth of those different networks coming together. And obviously it was, again, the social communication between the like-minded people, which in this case happened to be academics and the government. And then it was funny, the fax machine, which apparently was invented long before it actually came to market, 150 years. And this one was one where you were waiting for someone to fax to, right? And they talked a lot about that, things like phones and other things where there's no use being the first one because there's no one to call, there's no one to fax something to. But once there were a couple of systems out there, it became very clear what the relative advantage was of this diffusion, and it was able to spread from there. So it just kind of talked about how different types of groups or networks connect to one another and diffusion takes place. So again, we want to talk, it's very important to get to the critical mass. That is our key. That is where the revenue is. That is where the success is. So if we're not selling something, we're just trying to get people to adopt something. This is where we get to the point where the diffusion is sustainable on its own. So suggestions on getting to the critical mass were target top officials in the hierarchy. So that's kind of an easy one because obviously, if you get to the top guy and he thinks it's a great idea, and they just say from an authority perspective, everyone's going to use this email system, this CRM system, whatever it is. So you get not just the diffusion by an opinion leader, but you get that authority piece of it as well. Shape individual perceptions of innovation. Everybody's buying it, everybody's using it, everybody's wearing it. And you get people to get excited about being part of that in-group. Because again, a lot of it had to do with, opinion leaders, people that were quick on diffusing, happened to be of higher socioeconomic status, and so therefore were keeping up with the Joneses, that kind of a thing. Introduce the innovation to intact groups likely to adopt. So this had to do with going to like a neighborhood group and pushing an innovation that helped them communicate as a neighborhood. And in that, you're not just getting one, but you're getting maybe 20 or 300 different people who are all part of this one intact group. And provide incentives for early adoption. So there was a lot of talk about that in previous chapters, especially for things like family planning and stuff like that. that helped people to put peer pressure on one another, to participate in the innovation so that everybody could take advantage of the incentive. So this is it for this section of the module, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Thanks, guys.